Oh, namaste and welcome. Today we're going to be manifesting from the universe yoga poses, and we're going to be talking about love and kindness and love to everyone.
Except for you bigoted Christians. I hate you guys. What's up, guys? Million here with you. MILLIAN, your ministry provocateur, iconoclast, firebrand, and the resident heretic here at Dominion Fire. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're ready. We got a little bit of a long one today, so get yourself a drink, get yourself a coffee. I'm drinking a drink called mate, which is a South American, being of Argentine descent, a South American herbal drink, which is lovely and super healthy for you. It's part of the culture, which if you haven't figured out, that's kind of what today's vlog is about. And delicious drink. The only problem is every time I drink it, I get like this weird stabbing pain in my jaw. I don't quite know why. Either way, it's delicious. So settle in. We have a long way to go. Got a lot to talk about tonight. Thank you for being here. Now, the first thing is, sometimes you may ask yourself, why are you the provocateur? And the answer is simple. I want to provoke you. Now, why is that, you might ask? Because a lot of you are sleepwalking through this life. And I need to wake you up, and I need to give you some things to sort of shake you back into existence here. I have a delicious red pill for you to swallow, Neo. At this time of year, as I'm recording this, it is early June 2018, and here in Vegas, we've had a growth in our culture of certain things. That being that we're now getting professional sports teams, and with our hockey team having the success it's had this year, now they're in the finals. They're down 3-1 in their series, best of 7. It ain't looking so good, but we're grateful for the season we did have and for what they've done for our city, so we'll build on that. But ice skating has really picked up popularity here, and my son has become a super fan of ice skating. Every other day, Dad, can we go ice skating? Now, I haven't skated since I'm 9 years old. I took lessons, and I can get around, and I'm getting better, and I just bought myself a new pair. I've got a brand new pair of skates. I got skates coming. This week, they're going to be delivered, and I'm going to get my technique down. And now, I can't get around that well. I mean, like, when I look like a drunk guy trying to find his keys when I'm on the ice. So today, I told you all that for this. Today, my son says to me, Dad, I want to go ice skating. And we wanted to try a different place because he has a birthday coming up. He wants to do a birthday party somewhere. And there's a few rinks in town, and there's one he likes to go to, where he does his lessons currently. And he wanted to check out a different one because they're a little bigger and they have some more things. And I said, all right, we'll go check it out. And we had a very, very, very bad experience there today, just across the board with a lot of things. But what really kicked it off was that we were on the ice. They were late getting public skating going. Now, I'm not going to tell you where it is because I don't want to give them a bad name and all that, okay? But we're skating at the Las Vegas Ice Center, and over the PA system, they're doing like a theme right now. It's like a summer theme kind of thing. And, at a skating rink, they do the light shows while public skate is happening, and they do a playlist of music. Now, as we're skating around, my son is sort of oblivious to what's going around. He's trying to get his skating down, and I'm trying to get my legs back and all that stuff. I hear some very choice lyrics coming over the PA system, and I'm like, whoa, what was that? Break out my phone, break up Google, say, Google, what song is this? And I'm having it listen, and I finally track down the song. And I said to myself, I cannot believe they're playing this song where there's a bunch of kids skating around, 6 years old, 7 years old, and this particular song was horrible. It was just this guy talking about all the things this girl's going to do to him and how she's going to do it and and I'm like, okay, whoa, dear Tex. Now, did you know how they do that thing where they take like the profanity word and then they'll just do like the reverse of the word? Like they'll backmask it is what it's called. They'll just switch the one word around so it's garbled. But, she wants to do blah, blah, blah to me. It's like, I'm pretty sure I could piece it together what this guy's trying to convey. And so that was the last straw after a whole bunch of bad things were happening. And I said to my son, come on, he was hating it, and it was just a bad day all around. And so I went to go talk to the manager. Now, as I was packing up, getting ready to go, I said to myself, nah, I'm just not going to come back. That'll be the end of it. And then I thought to myself, no, I'm going to talk to the manager. And I'll call him when I get home. And I said, no, third time. I said, before I leave, I'm going to pull the manager over. I'm going to tell him directly. And so after it was over, I went over to the manager and I spoke to him about it. And I told him flat out, I brought up the lyrics on my phone. I showed him, I said, this is playing right now in your PA system. I said, my son is 7. He does not belong hearing this. I'm 42 years old. I don't need to hear this. I don't need this crap in my ears anymore. You know what I mean? And this guy was like, oh, I'm so sorry. We try to do this. And I said, I don't care what you try to do. This doesn't belong here. I said, we were planning a birthday party. We're not having it here. I said, you guys lost the business. I said, I just want you to know that and, do with it what you will. And, he was pretty lukewarm. He apologized and blah, blah, blah. And that was the end of the story. But the moral of the story, which is what kind of brings everything back together with what I'm trying to tell you here, is that this is an opportunity for me to force certain culture or to beat back certain culture in an offensive role. And that's something I want to talk to you about today, because that is something that you're missing out on most likely in your life and you're not paying attention to. And you're not paying attention to sort of the what's going on, the man behind the curtain thing. You're not paying attention. You're just eating the sausage. You're not seeing how it's made. And that's what I want to show you today. For the last 50 years, 60 years in our culture, there's always been an element of it, but for the last 50 years, there has been an intentional, systematic programming of society towards certain cultural things, if you will, certain beliefs and certain movements, right? Now, the puppet masters that are behind this have worked to normalize things which are not necessarily normal behaviors in a lot of different cases, okay? But at the end of the day, what you're seeing here is something that is a matter of control and domination of masses and population. It's a control tactic. And at the bottom of it, at the core, it is satanic at its core. And why is that? Because what is Satan ultimately trying to do? Look big picture at this for a second. He is desperately trying to manufacture for himself his own kingdom using manipulation, cheating, hacking the system. That's textbook Satan, right? What he wants what is ultimately promised to us, without having to follow the model or get himself out of the mess he's in. Plain English, he is SOL right now. He's trying to manufacture himself an escape route, and when he goes down, he's planning to take you with him. That's really the big picture of what this whole thing comes down to, okay? Put that just kind of at the forefront of what we're saying here. Now, in culture, society, culture, general media, and all that stuff, I call this weaponized media, and here's why. You'll have songs, music, movies, art, etc. And it's weaponized because media is used because it's one of those things that they say, oh, it should be protected. It's expression. And someone gets to express themselves. It's free speech. But what you got to remember, it's free speech until you decide to go against whatever is trying to be pushed here. Then it's not free speech anymore. So it's an interesting, dichotomy, if you will. In all of this, people don't necessarily fully realize how much influence the media has and how much this whole free speech expression and how much the system is hacked. Again, textbook Satan stuff. Now, the whole free speech thing, you don't believe me? Don't bake my gay cake and watch what happens to you. If you haven't been following the news, it turns into a big mess for certain people, okay? And don't you find it odd that musicians, actors, celebrities all basically share the same worldviews, the same political ideologies, the same general beliefs about things? Don't you find that interesting? Because if they don't get to work. They don't get to make money. They don't get to become famous. They sell their soul, in essence. It's all by design. Now, I said a long time ago that you're seeing in our culture and society certain things and people and categories being pushed. And I said it is really going to be fun when these manufactured cultures, if you will, ultimately butt heads and collide. And you're starting to see it now. If you haven't followed the news in Canada, there was a Muslim, who Muslims have been getting a lot of preferential treatment for certain things, a Muslim esthetician, the people do body waxing and all like the hair removal and stuff. A Muslim body wax person refused service to a transgender person, another one of these people getting preferential treatment. Now you have two manufactured things now butting heads. And again, what do I always tell you with this? The enemy always overplays his hand, and what's going to happen is a lot of this stuff's going to destroy itself. And this is why in previous vlogs and podcasts, I always tell you got to kind of stay the course, you got to know what you're looking at, you got to use your discernment, and you have to act accordingly. That's really the crux of what I'm trying to teach you here. The kingdom of heaven is something I want you to kind of keep right again at the forefront. Back in the day when you had the Hebrews, right? They held the name of God in like this ultimate reverence to them, meaning that the name was not to be said. It was just too holy. I can't say God's proper name. It's just utter reverence thing. So you'll see modern day people like on Facebook will type, YHWH, Yod Hey Vav Hey, they type that, or they'll type G-D for God. And I'm like, really? Like I don't know what you mean. You think the dash in place of an O really changes it that much? Apparently, it makes you holier when you do that. So, hey, mazel tov to you, I guess. I don't know. What happens is whenever there's something in place that is, in essence, forbidden, if you will, people find workarounds for it. They find a way to hack the system, or they use figures of speeches, euphemisms, if you will, to say the same thing. Well, back in those days, they, like anything else, found ways around cultural things, right? So instead of saying God or the proper name, whatever it was in their particular realm, they would say heaven or the kingdom of heaven. So the phrase kingdom of heaven became known as a euphemism for the proper name of God without saying the actual name of God. So keep that in mind. Now, how do we know this? If you look in Luke 15:17, the prodigal son, he says, I will arise, I'll go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you. Who gets preference? Heaven. Who's heaven? God. I've sinned against God. I've sinned against you. So there it is in actual use. Whenever you see what they call the law of first mention, so it's whenever something's mentioned or covered for the first time in a scripture somewhere, take an extra look at it. Because even though it may say one thing, there's going to be like extra little gems scattered around that you can pull from it, some extra gold to mine, Easter eggs, if you will, if you want to go hunt them out. Boy, that's going to really freak out some of you religious people that I just said that. Now, taking it back to the beginning. Good place to start, right? John the Baptist, Jean-Baptiste, Matthew 3:2 says, repent, okay, meaning change your mind, get ready to do it differently, think about things differently, approach it a different way, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Get ready to do things a different way, because God's here. Now, John Baptist was the greatest of the prophets. Now, my question for you is, why was he the greatest of prophets? I just want to know your opinion. Leave it in the comments down below. There's a reason I'm going for here. All right, John the Baptist. Now let's bump down, to the important guy, Jesus, right? Jesus mentions the kingdom of heaven when Matthew 4:17 says, from that time on, Jesus began to preach. Now, what's kind of interesting about this? This is the first recorded words of a public ministry, if you really break it down, right? What's the first thing he's saying here? Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. I've heard that somewhere before, right? What does it mean? You better start paying attention and doing things differently because I'm here now. And we're changing this thing. Get ready. Plain English, right? Well, you got to kind of really work through this when you see that and hear that. Because number one, it's referring to three concepts. Number one is the king is here, and because the king is here, the kingdom follows him. Because wherever the king goes, that's where the kingdom is, right? Another part of that we know is redemptive works. You get your salvation, healing, deliverance, so on and so forth. And the other time that's brought into this mix is involving people who voluntarily took up this fight or took up this movement, if you will. Okay? As a modern-day Christian, you enlisted in this army. You need to learn how to fight the right way to win the battle. With all this in mind, we say the kingdom of heaven is at hand, Jesus is here, blah, 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 right? My question for you is, who lives inside of you? Who are you joined in one spirit with? Search your scripture. You tell me what you find there. But keep that concept in mind of the kingdom being here. Before I was saved, I went to college for the area of psychology. So I have a psychology degree. I attended Rowan University, class of 99, if you really want to know. And what I want to do here is I sort of want to connect a couple dots for you. I want to show you how manipulation is done and how you can be susceptible to it. I hold a psychology degree. I was training to be a psychologist in some area. I don't know where, never got there. Beside the point. But you gotta remember, psychology is founded by a bunch of perverted cokeheads who had no clue what they were doing at the time either. But they did stumble on a couple truths. They say the broken clock is right twice a day. It means you occasionally get one, right? And just because they're whacked out cokeheads doesn't necessarily mean that when they find a truth, that it's not the truth. Truth is truth no matter who speaks it. And there's going to be times where you're going to hear truth from someone you don't like, and you're going to have to process that. You're going to have to cope, because that's how this thing's going to be done. You're going to have times where you don't like the messenger, but you need to hear the message. Okay, so just keep that in mind going forward. Truth is truth. The first class I ever took, literally the first class ever that I walked into my first day of college, mass media and its influences. It was an elective course I had to take as part of a certain batch they make you do to make that extra money. Not that it did anything for my degree or, oh, you're well-rounded. No, I'm well paid up on my check is what I am. It was interesting because that was very impressionable, and I remember a ton of lessons from that, and it didn't really sink in until later. In subsequent years, as I went through it, I studied social psychology and systems in psychology. That was the most boring class ever. And there's two classes I actually aced. One was an elective, public speaking. Big shock, right? The other one being psychopharmacology, which is the study of how, psychotropic drugs and medications affect the body, so on and so forth, and how it's used in psychology. Aced both of them. What I want to show you is sort of the psychology background to a lot of this. Now, I told you this is going to be long, so you better get comfortable. Go grab a cup of coffee or something. I'm telling you, you got to hear this. What is today's biggest form of influence over people? Now, think about that for a second, and while you're doing that, look back through history, as we like to do here. There was a time where newspapers really were the thing, okay? They had the influence. Then there came a time where TV took over, and there was only 3 channels, and you could control a message. Then there came, radio, and then there was the internet. Well, as this is continuing to develop, what is the big thing today? What do you see everybody constantly with? Right, mobile devices. What they have found with mobile devices is this. In your brain, you have certain chemicals, and they're called neurotransmitters. And what they do is they control various functions. Like certain ones control, like when people have depression, it's an imbalance in a certain chemical, or whenever you get like a burst of pleasurable sensations in your body, there's a chemical in your brain synapses that fires and causes that reaction. That's called dopamine. You've probably heard that before. It's the pleasure chemical, so to speak. So whenever you feel good or you feel rewarded, you feel fulfilled, little puff of dopamine hits your synapses and you're feeling good, so on and so forth. What they have found is that when you're playing with your social device and you put out something like on Facebook and someone comes along and hits that thumbs up or like or the heart button or any of that stuff, you get a little burst of dopamine. That's why they found this to be so effective, and that's why social media has taken over to the degree it has. It's a form of influence and a psychology behind it. Now, what are you looking at when you have your mobile device? Where you're looking at media, right? Music, movies, YouTube, television, social media. Now, I say YouTube because, well, I'm kind of doing it right now, but did you notice that on YouTube that the people who get promoted to the top are all people that generally share the same ideology, like the famous guys on YouTube? Didn't you ever notice that? And a lot of them are these really delicate, wimpy, hipster kind of guys who couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag if they had to. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Or whenever there's any kind of social movement going on or people are, pushing things forward, those are the videos that get featured. Don't you find that interesting? It's by design, is what I'm trying to tell you here. Now, there's an area of bias when it comes to things like social media, for instance. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not saying this to take a political stance. I'm doing this purely as analysis, so make sure you understand what I'm doing here. There are 2 main categories. Now, there are several categories of people that get put in different compartments on social media. They have software that does this. But if you tend to be right of center in politics, or if you're Christian, those 2 are hit the hardest. And I can give you example after example of it. And remember, everything you see on TV and in movies and commercials and social media is all engineered by design for the purpose of social influence and control. Just remember that last sentence. Remember that anytime you pick up anything whatsoever. Once you realize what you're dealing with and what you're up against, that snare pops right off your neck. Now, allow me to give you an example of what I mean. One of the biggest pieces of influence that you're going to see in culture is something like television, which it still has its relevance, but it's fading. Where you'll see it the most right now is in late-night talk shows or anytime you see a comedy talk show. There is a psychological tactic that is used, and some people call it leading and pacing, but it's not quite, or as some people refer to it as NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. There's elements of it. What they'll do is, here's the tactic, here's how it works. Let's say that they're covering a social topic on a late-night talk show. The host will come out and do his monologue. He will make a point, a general point that sort of can hit everybody. Then what he'll do is once he says that, he makes a hyper-exaggerated joke involving something that's sort of out there, sort of ordinary, but actually very funny. It really is. Now, people laugh, and as they're laughing, they're processing exactly what that guy said in their mind. When you're in that state where it's a laugh combined with processing something crazy outrageous that was said to you a few seconds ago as you're processing, you're now in a suggestive state. Because what they'll do is when they get you in that suggestive state, then they'll hit you with the follow-up point, which goes farther and harder into their bias. Okay, see how that works? Make a point, make you laugh with something outrageous. As you're laughing, processing, hit it with the hard point. And if you watch any of these late night talk show monologues, they do the same exact thing. It repeats the pattern over and over because repetition brings about influence and brings about suggestion. It's a hypnotic technique. They use this all the time. Why do you think comedians always seem to be the voice of social movements or run for political office, for instance? Why do you think that is? Because they know how to do this technique. It's part of their training. It's part of their shtick. You want to get out of a speeding ticket? You can find a way to make the cop laugh. Your odds have just risen dramatically. Not saying it'll happen, just throwing it out there. But all this stuff I'm telling you, this is all researched psychology. People have spent millions and millions of dollars researching this. This is why ads and movies and music and TV, this is why it all works. Because people have spent beaucoup bucks figuring out the formula, and they know how to work it to a T. And by the way, just because I'm talking about this stuff, don't think church is immune from any of this. Because did you ever notice when you get into church, it's the morning, you're all groggy, you don't feel like being there, and then what happens? They hit you with the worship music, and it's all like, all right, everybody, come on, stand up, we're going to worship Jesus today, come on, oh! You know, they all go crazy. Because what are they doing? They're trying to engage you and get you going. By the time the second song comes around, notice that one's a little more mellow, and you're just kind of like, you know, because you're Christian, you clap off beat. You know, that whole thing. But then the third song comes around. Remember, it's in 3 because that's usually a hypnotic number. Comedy. Remember, usually it's the rule of 3s. You hit in segments of 3 to make the comic line hit. 3 songs come along. Did you notice the third song, by the time you're kind of up, you're into it, the next song is usually like very hypnotic, very repetitive. The same musical chords play over and over again. Hillsong comes to mind, right? The same lyrics are stated over and over again. Why is that? Because it's repetitive, it's hypnotic, you get into a suggestive state. Because in many cases, what immediately follows after that third worship song? You got the music still, the guy with the keyboards and the strings playing in the background, pastor comes up, he's like, all right, we're just going to say our prayer right now. Thank you for being here today. We're going to be doing our tithes and offerings coming up next. Continue worshiping while we do that. Why do you think they do that? Because you're already in a suggestive state. Not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it's what they do. Start paying attention. So where does this influence happen? Let me give you some examples and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Social media. Now, why is social media as big as it is? Well, we talked about the dopamine thing and the triggering the brain chemicals and all that. But at the core of it, we're social beings, okay? We're built to be around each other. You know, there's always been like groups and tribes and societies and things such as that, tribalism. And through that group, you can influence. Twitter is a great example because they do this blatantly and they make no attempt to hide it. And Facebook's not much better. YouTube's horrible at this. They all do. All the big Silicon Valley outlets that you know, they all do this. They're really all under one umbrella. You think they're all separate stuff. They're really all big part of one operation. It's like a big mess. But again, once you know how the magic trick works, it's not magic anymore. That's what I'm trying to show you. Twitter does this thing where let's say you have 1,000 followers. Facebook does this too. Did you notice when you put out a post, only maybe a handful of people actually see it? And out of those handful that see it, only a couple respond. And you're like, what the heck's going on here? I have like 1,000 people. Nobody's getting back to me. Well, that's done by design. That's called organic reach. Because what they do is they limit you to a certain amount. But if you want to pay a little more to boost this post and get it out to everybody, we'll be happy to take your money by design. Number 2, if you start posting things that go against a certain ideology that Silicon Valley has, what happens is they have programs called algorithms. And what these algorithms do is they scan everything going on that everybody's posting and putting up there, and they look for keywords and certain patterns and things like that. Once they identify that you've stated a pattern or made a statement or took a stance on something, you get categorized in various databases. Then what happens is when you go to post about something, now that they have you categorized, now instead of reaching that 2-3% of people, now maybe you reach 0.5% of everybody. And then you're like, wait a second, I got 1,000 people, I'm putting this out here, and nobody's responding? That's called shadow banning, and that's how that works. Why do they do that? Because now that they've identified you as going against something they believe, when you post it out, it's not that they're necessarily trying to stop you, they're trying to discourage you by thinking that out of 1,000 people, nobody believes me, nobody agrees with me. Am I alone here? They're trying to isolate you. And when you're isolated, you get kind of freaked out. When you're freaked out, you can be suggestive. That's kind of how the trick works. Or a perfect example, again, not getting political. I don't care where you stand on this, but just take note. President Trump has used Twitter, played them like a fiddle with how he's done Twitter. It's fascinating. But if you notice when he was first elected, anytime he would post anything on Twitter, if you hit the comment section, at least the first 50 comments were coming at him, attacking him, calling him names, calling him out, just all negative, 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 negative. Now, why is that? Because there's a mix of everything. I mean, half the country voted, half didn't. You know what I mean? There's got to be somebody in the mix, right? But what it is when someone else comes along and looks at that who may be on the fence about a certain topic and they start reading the comments for social verification as they go through it, and they're like, oh, everybody's against this. Maybe I'm wrong. It's a social influence technique, okay? If you post something on Twitter that maybe disagrees with a certain ideology, what'll happen is they have another software called a bot. And what this bot software does is it scans, looks in your database, looks where you are, and it waits until you make a post about, I think so-and-so should be banned or this should be banned. What'll happen is they set up fake Twitter profiles that are not real people, they're just softwares. They have a little picture and a bio and they have a history, it's all pre-made. What they'll do is they'll come along and they'll post a comment that goes against what you've said. Now they're setting a trap for you. It's a snare. Because why? If you come back and you respond to them, number one, you've taken the bait. Number two, it triggers something called a bot hive or a Twitter hive, H-I-V-E, like a beehive. And what happens is this program is programmed to respond back to you and to go bring about 5 or 10 more of these bots with it. So now you get blitzed upon. And if you keep going back and keep answering all these people and trying to get into these big fights with them or whatever it is that people do on social media, right? What happens? More and more of these negative things come at you. Why? It's not to change your opinion. It's so that when someone else comes along and sees that, oh, I agree with so-and-so that he posted, then you click and read the comments, everybody's against it. It's meant to make you feel like you're marginalized, like you're in the minority, and it's done by design. It's a social influence technique. Okay, so these are all things. Did you ever look in the Facebook trending section? You know, where all the little news articles are down the side? Christian bigots refuse to bake a wedding cake for a loving same-sex couple, embarrassing them in their community. I'm like, oh, wow, how did we get to that? You're going right for the jugular. You're not pulling any punches, are you? But this is what I'm talking about. If you start paying attention, you're going to start seeing this. Now, music, TV, movies, why are all celebrities, actors, musicians, etc., all of a certain political leaning? Why? Because they go along with the company line by the people who pay them. They push an agenda to ensure they still get to work, they get paid, they make money, because once you get used to that lifestyle, you ain't going back to Walmart. Let's be honest, right? They make a trade. They sell their soul, if you will, some people would say. Because TV, movies, music, all has major, major influence over culture, right? How many movie quotes can you rattle off? Right? Or you ever have a job where you work with someone, all they do is rattle off movie quotes all day, and you're like, please, shut up. All right, I saw the movie, too. I've seen Star Wars 857,000 times. I know the quote. Can you stop? All right? How many lines from movies have become cultural things that people say, right? All righty then. Come on, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a method to control the language. Whenever a movement happens, usually what you'll notice is there's people involved, and there's also a coordinated attack with media and social media and all these various levels of influence, okay? It creates what's called the narrative, okay? And I've told you this before, if you can control the language, you can control the culture. You can control what people do. Meaning that, oh, it's not abortion, there's no babies getting hurt, it's family planning. We need to plan our parent, because planning's a good thing, right? Please don't plan any of my birthday parties. Please, I'm begging you. We're not doing yoga in school. It's just stretching. Well, why don't you just stretch and stop doing the yoga poses if that's all it is? Why you got to bring yoga into it? Have you met Michelle? Used to be Michael, but he's transgender now. He's not transgender. It's a dude in a wig. Please, I'm not playing along with your people's delusions. Stop it. You know, in psychology back in the day, some of the stuff that people are trying to normalize was in the diagnostic manual as mental illness, until someone came along, created a movement to try to change it and normalize it. The media, happy to help it along. I hate to break this to you, but this is what it is. I'm not playing along with stupidity. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing it. Well, million, that's hate speech. Is it hate speech, or is it just an opinion you're too delicate to handle and nobody's ever told you how to cope with? I thought everybody's got a right to say what they say, and it's free speech. Maybe you're gullible and have been conditioned by this culture. Free speech? Sure, only if you agree with what I have to say, only if you go along with the narrative. Otherwise, it's hate speech. You're a bigot. Whatever you are. You know, the name calling. Again, that's a form of social influence. If you can't notice what'll happen if you get into a debate with someone about a social or political topic. Once they realize they've lost the debate, what happens next? They go to name calling. Low level, still works, doesn't it? You know what I'm talking about. Have you ever gotten into an argument with someone on Facebook about something? You know that lingers with you all day, man. You know you walk away from your computer still thinking about it, like it takes up rent space in your head, and you're like, know what I should have said to them? I should have said this. And you can't wait to get home and start typing that response and start the process all over again. Do you know how crazy it is when you come to the realization that you're not even arguing with a person in a lot of cases? You're arguing with a software. Crowbar that into your cranium for a minute. Yeah. Let me give you another example. A teen commits a school shooting. Now, this is a big thing, and you know why. You know a whole idea behind this. Okay, do some research, right? Oh, a teen shot up his classmate. Then, the thoughts and prayers thing comes out, and I'm like, okay, please stop. Stop. I'm a Christian, and thoughts and prayers drive me nuts when people write that. Or just like on Facebook, when people, someone says, they tell their whole life story and what they need, and someone responds, praying. Drives me up the wall. Thoughts and prayers. And then what'll happen is, here's what it comes along. People will say, oh, well, you Christians, where was God when this school shooting happened? Well, since you banned him from schools for the past 50 years, told him he's not welcome here, what do you expect exactly? Have you noticed, again, big picture, guys, have you noticed that when God is forced out of something or forced out of a situation or an institution, everybody falls apart? They're miserable. They're depressed. People are suicidal. It's a train wreck going on. Right? Have you noticed right now they've been pushing God out of our culture for 50, 60 years? And mental illness right now in our country is out of control? Everybody's losing their marbles. Oh, but hey, the universe will take care of it, right? Oh, it's about love and kindness. And you want to just, as soon as I see people do this, I want to twist up their little fingers like a pretzel and just stick it in their ear. Sorry, I messed up my mic. But for 50 years, godless hacks have been telling us how to raise our kids and then blame God when they grow up and they turn into these little monsters created by the exact same system. But no, God is to blame, right? Fortunately, no one is ever too far gone from God to handle them. Thank you, hallelujah for that. But on our end, as believers who are kind of embattled in all this and are trying to figure this whole thing out, we clearly have our work cut out for us. So now let me pivot back to more godly things, if you will. Romans 8:37 reads, "No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." Now, a lot of times what happens is, again, we sort of get programmed in a lot of ways when it comes to Scripture. And that's not a bad thing. Relax, calm down. Understand what I'm trying to say? What happens is we get so used to hearing it so many times, because that's one of the more popular lines, that we glance over important things that you may miss. Now, people in this particular Romans 8, that's a great chapter about all the wonderful things God does for us, blah, blah, blah. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Oh, he loves us. How he loves us. And then we start the worship saying. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's a section you're glossing over in this. It says, we are more than conquerors. But don't forget, you're still conquerors. Okay, so at the end of the day, what does that mean? Well, what is a conqueror? Well, if you look in like Webster Dictionary, for instance, there's several definitions, but the one that I really liked for this one was to overcome by mental or moral power, or to overtake by force. I think that's interesting. Why? Matthew 11:12 reads, "From the days of John the Baptist," taking it back to the beginning, law first mention, right? "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven," told you keep that in mind, "suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." Now, let's open up a can of worms here. Conquerors, which obviously you are, don't play the prevent defense. Now, if you watch sports and you're up in your game or whatever, or your team is leading or something like that, and they go into that defensive shell, it works sometimes. Eventually, your luck runs out with that, okay? Teams that win attack. They go on offense. They actually take the initiative. Now, we lose the culture as Christians because we get comfortable. We sit back, and when something comes up like this, we may put up a little resistance, we may march about something, may complain, but when it's all said and done, we ultimately acquiesce to it and let it happen. And what happens? The enemy gains a few more yards closer to the end zone, and all he does is keep pushing forward and forward. He never stops, right? That's the thing about the enemy. It's all tenacity. He does not stop. And that's why you always have to be ready to go and be on guard for this stuff. All throughout history, kingdoms that are not well defended get taken over. Okay? No matter how much the residents of these kingdoms being taken over, no matter how much they whine and they piss and moan about it, without any kind of action, they get conquered, right? So the things that we believe, the things we stand for, we've rolled over and we've let the outside forces take us over. We've let them box us into this irrelevant corner where nobody pays attention to us and calls us names. Haven't you picked up on that yet? Remember, they, for whatever reason, have figured out a way to define who we are, what names we are called, and the things we stand for. Why? Remember, control the language, control the culture. Not a good position to be in. We've gotten, as Christians, so used to used to being like humble, and we're just going to be quiet about it. We're going to turn the other cheek. No. We're just going to pray on it. No. We've been steamrolled into an irrelevant corner, guys. And it's time to start boxing our way out of this thing. No one really takes us seriously, even though most people are desiring something to fill that spiritual void in their lives. But why? Why don't they listen to us? Because we've allowed ourselves to be defined for what we are and what we believe. As soon as you mention Jesus out in culture, you hear eyes rolling and grunting and all that stuff, right? When people are looking for something to fill that void, I hate to be cliche, but people call it that God-shaped hole and all of it. You've heard that before, right? Well, what do they do when we're marginalized? What do? They turn to, the law of attraction. I'll just manifest what I need. Oh, I'm going to do yoga because I need to get in touch with my inner... The universe will tell me what to do. Where does all that get popularized? Where does that all enter the culture? TV, media, YouTube, social media, etc. It's all by design. The conditioning of the gullible and the impressionable who have no clue they're being programmed. And this is what we're up against. This is why God gave you discernment. This is why I'm showing you how the magic trick works, so that when you see it, the razzle-dazzle's gone. It's not magic anymore once you know the trick. Now, you can enjoy magic once you know the trick. You could still enjoy it, but you know that it doesn't have that hold over you anymore, right? Now, Christians, we're responsible too. I'm not letting us off the hook either. Make no mistake. There were horrible things done to people in the name of God under stupid doctrines that people still believe. Okay, there's a problem here. Christians, we've blown this thing. We've had this in our hand. We let it get away from us. And we fought these culture wars, but we fight them the wrong way using wrong and ineffective tactics. And make no mistake, a complete change of mind of how we approach everything needs to happen. Remember, repent, change your mind, change how you think, change how you do stuff, right? We need to take a different approach to this. It needs to be a more offensive-minded approach. Why do we need to repent? Because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's inside of us, right? And to do that, you need to start conquering cultural territory. And you say, we just love them and we pray, which is fine, but it's not enough. Let's go to war. We'll just march a little bit, say yes, sir, no, sir. That should be good enough to win the war, right? It's not enough. It's wonderful. Should suffice? No, it's not enough. You need better tactics, okay? Don't think the enemy's not constantly revising what he does. He's got a well-organized army that knows what they're doing, right? So what I'm telling you is I'm giving you some tactics here. And these tactics are what I call forcing the culture. Now, why do you want to force the culture? Because the culture has no problem forcing it right back on you. Am I right? Somebody? Somewhere? Can somebody type an amen, please? What am I telling you to do? Now, let me just stop right here. I am not, under any circumstances, telling you to physically threaten, be violent. I'm not saying that. Do not do that, okay? What I'm telling you is learn the enemy's tactics, dissect them, and turn it around and use it against them, okay? Because they have no problem doing this to you. How do you do this? What I want you to remember is that the power of life and death is in your tongue. So what does that mean? Start speaking up. Start saying things. Your words, you don't believe this? Your words carry power. Control the language, control the culture. There's power in that. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? Notice how as I've been going through this, I've been kind of doing some of these techniques. I keep giving you repetition on this stuff. Control the language, control the culture. I'm trying to get this in your head. So when you have a situation that, let's say there's something going, like the ice rink today, there's something going on. I didn't like it. It doesn't belong there. Oh, well, you and your morals. That's right. Me and my morals. Now you're going to start listening to me. It doesn't belong here. And don't think for 1 minute I didn't start up about it. Yes, I did. Whoever's in charge, like in the case of the ice rink, the manager, I went right to the manager. I brought it to his attention. I got up in his face about it. No, I was polite. Don't get me wrong. But for dramatic effect, you understand what I'm saying. I brought it to the attention of the people in charge because why? If one person does it, more will follow. If you start setting this example for people that you're willing to take that step, more people will follow in your footsteps. Why do you think Jesus sent people out 2 by 2? It's because courage is contagious. And I've been out ministering in the street with people before. I didn't feel like being there. I don't want to talk to this guy. My partner with me, he'd go up there and start talking to them, and then I go over and I'm kind of, and then I start engaging and start talking. Now I get into it, and now I'm ready to go around and start talking to people. It's contagious, okay? This kind of stuff is contagious. That's why whenever you see these movements, people jump all over it. People want to be part of something. So whenever you have it, find who's in charge of this, tell them, and put the pressure on them. The best way I can explain it to you is put them on the spot. Give them the microphone, put them in the spotlight, and tell them to sing. And put them right there in front of everything and see how they handle it. Because I'll tell you, a lot of times when you put people on the spot like that, they fold like cheap beach chairs. Because a lot of it is all presentation. It's all talk. And, not everyone, of course. Now, there's times you're going to meet resistance, and that's okay. No problem at all. But put in the effort is what I'm telling you. Another thing you can do is force the atmosphere. Now, I'll give you, for instance, what I did. I went to go pick up my son at school. Now, I've had a couple issues with the school. I'll explain in a second. What I did one day, I was feeling it. I was worked up. I drove to school, rolled down the windows, cranked up worship music. How many kings step down from... I have my hands up in the air. I'm steering with my knee. I'm doing that whole thing. Yeah, I'm totally going off. Cranked up. People are looking at me like, what's the matter with this guy? I'm like, that's right, baby. Jesus. And so what did I do? I rolled up into the parking lot. Cars everywhere, kids everywhere, teachers. How many kings step down from their throne? I'm just going off. In case you didn't notice, I was doing that song. But anyway, and why? Because I'm forcing the culture. Because I guarantee you, somebody in that mix knows that song. And you know what? They're not going to be as coy about their faith or their demonstration of faith going forward. It's the butterfly effect. Just because you don't see the effect happening doesn't mean it's not. There's ripples, like the dropping the stone in the water and you see the ripples. The butterfly effect. It does affect people, believe it or not. And let me put it to you this way. You know that idiot that drives by your house at 4 a.m, you're trying to sleep, he's got the bass going, it rattles your house, your china, your teeth, there's fillings coming out. He has no problem whatsoever forcing his culture now, does he? I'm going to take a wild guess and say that the music he's playing that's rattling your house, probably not the most positive music out there. I could be wrong, but you decide. Someone who hears that song that you're putting out is going to know that. You're going to empower someone. You may not see it. And this is the hard part about what we do in faith and ministry. When I do these vlogs or podcasts, I have no clue if anybody's getting anything out of these. I really don't. I got to put it out there and just have faith that it's going to work. But what am I doing when I roll down the windows and force onto everybody what I like? I'm using your tactic against you. I'm broadcasting it out to people that, yes, Jesus is here. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Yes, I do. Oh, well, you know what? That's just a dog whistle for you bigoted Christians. Dog whistle? Guess what? We'll grab a raincoat because this dog's about to lift his leg, Jacko. It's going to get messy up in here. Yes, I am. You have the Jesus t-shirt that, I don't want to wear at the grocery store. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Put that thing on, man. Rock it with pride. Put the decals on the car. Crank the music. You really want to freak them out? Minister healing in front of a group of people. Make it a public spectacle. Why? Force your culture. What they've done is they've tried to create the illusion that people like us are in the minority and we're outdated or old-fashioned. You Christians need to get into the 21st century, man. God is way past the 21st century, and so am I. Way past this decade. Way past this millennium. You Christians are crazy with your imaginary sky daddy. I'm not out of my mind, bro. I'm out of yours. You're the one that's lacking. You're the one missing the pieces. Sorry, man. Because there are people who won't speak up, who want to speak up but won't. And so you got to understand, I'm putting this video to a potential audience of 2 billion users on YouTube. You don't think I'm going to catch some flack for this? You don't think people are going to come at me? Count on it, man. People are going to come at me for this. But you see, the more people that see stuff like this and the more culture that you force, the more people realize that, yeah, other people do feel the same way. I'm not alone. I'm not isolated. Yes, there are more of us. Yes, this is the majority belief. Yes, people believe in God. Yes, people need spiritual voids filled. Yes, people need God. Otherwise, because society's falling apart in a lot of places. Real simple answer. You have to be the catalyst that starts this ball rolling. No one else is going to do it. It's your job. You know, if we're all hanging back, we're all doing nothing. Remember, if two of us are doing the same thing, one of us is not needed. So someone's got to step up. This is me putting something out there. Hopefully it gets you going. I don't know. Oh, you really want to flip them out? Raise your kids to do the same as another tactic you can use. Train up the kids to advocate for stuff as well. Like my son, we've had an issue with his school I told you about. They have yoga in school. Yoga is demonic, does not belong in school, doesn't belong anywhere, but they're bringing it in schools. I don't like it. I raised a stink last year about it because there was a whole thing with it, and I went off and I got up in their face. My wife called at school, and they're like, well, you know, it's just stretching. Can you understand our point of view? No, and she says, no, I cannot. She didn't let him off the hook on that one. And so it came around again this year. It's in part of a dance class of all things. And my son, I've been hammering him all year. I've been teaching him all this about yoga and what it is and why you can't do it. It was time for a yoga class to come around this year. He pretty much got up in her face and said, sorry, I'm not doing this. This is from the devil. This goes against Jesus. I think he called her a hippie too. I'm not completely sure. But he pretty much said right in front of all the other kids in front of his class, he said, I'm not doing it. Sorry. Talk to my dad. They said, okay, if you don't want to do it, grab a book, go to the front desk and go read during class. And he did. He grabbed his stuff and he left, said, sorry, not doing it. And he walked out. I'm proud of my boy. He clearly laid it out, and other kids saw this. Impressionable kids, too, because young kids are impressionable. You know that. So at the end of the day here, the thoughts and prayers thing, it isn't working, guys. These tactics need to be updated. More intense measures and tactics are needed, like the ones I just explained to you. I've given you some examples, but this is just where it starts. What I'm telling you is, use this. Go get out there. Go conquer this thing, okay? Let's take back what is rightfully ours for the kingdom. Force the culture and go win this thing. Go. Make me proud. Thanks for hanging with me. Million, out. Go get 'em.